Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is literally rewiring your mind and how to do that. This literally is like, to me, this is my baby. I love talking about this. Could talk about it all day, every day. But I am one of the co-hosts here. And my name is Karin Angelly. And like I said, I'm excited to talk about this because I could talk about this all day, every day. So,
Awesome. My name is Ashley, and I'm right there with you. I think this is kind of the starting point to my whole spiritual journey.
yeah.
Um, was cracking open a very Christian book, but Dr. Caroline Leaf's book,
Mhm.
and it got me into the whole rewiring your brain and really creating the life you want. And one of my favorite quotes has always been, the best way to predict your future is to create it.
Mhm.
So, which could even be a side tangent on its own with the whole psychics and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So for me, it's been a very fundamental part of my life since I was probably like 22 was when I picked up that book. And then for me, it kind of just escalated and kept growing and building upon that. So, and then I had a
Yeah.
brain injury. So then it was even more interesting. So I had a lot of
I
people say,
I actually would love for you to kind of expand upon that with your brain injury because I feel like that could be relatable to a lot of people too. Not that there are a lot of people out there with
"Mhm,
brain injuries, but there are at the same time. But how you had to like really rewire your brain because it was probably not the easiest thing to do after.
yeah. Well, there was aspects of it that were easier than others. So I had 5 brain bleeds, and 3 of them resulted in some permanent damage. I was told I wouldn't work again and to accept my new normal. And I had counselors tell me that I had to accept my new normal. And the reason that I was so depressed and struggling with my life was because I wasn't accepting that this is the new way it is.
Mm.
But because I didn't accept it, I went on to learn more, make bigger paychecks. Like everything in my life got better from that point, for sure, in every area. So I guess the only area would be like my physical capabilities. My that's the only thing that hasn't really recovered yet. My lung capacity, because I collapsed my lungs, hasn't quite got there for my endurance, but everything else has been great. And so for me, I had to work through a lot of like PTSD and everything
Mm.
like that.
Oh
And
yeah, I bet.
yeah, and what
Scary.
I was told by the people that I was seeing, because I had to be hospitalized for over a year, and they had like hospital counselors and then counselors I saw after I got out of the hospital that were paid for my recovery. And so they said, like, just avoid your triggers, figure out what your triggers are and avoid them was
Mm.
that their way of handling it. And so for
Yeah.
me, I was like, well, then I'm like afraid to walk across the street.
I can't drink a glass of water. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. And so, yeah, for me, it was I was walking across the street and the drunk driver ran me over and I left
Mhm.
Starbucks. And definitely that, like, it was downtown and that spot, I never loved driving by that spot or walking across that street much. But I like forced myself to like walk across the street and there was little things that I just really didn't enjoy that scared me. And I think a lot of spiritual people talk about how everyone of like as humans we're afraid of certain things because of our fall to earth, and so we're afraid of falling. That is like a fundamental fear,
Yeah,
and
I've
getting
heard that.
hurt. There's one more, and they're just like fundamental fears, and once you have it like happen in a very significant way, that fear becomes a lot more significant. And that was very true for me. Like I used to be like a daredevil and um like really was an adrenaline junkie and all that kind of stuff. And with the accident, I still had that desire that in me, but I no longer could do it. Like I would have panic attacks going snowboarding
Mm.
and even dirt biking for me right now. Like I take my kids dirt biking and I will probably have a panic attack every time I go. So it's still there, but I'm not having it stop me. And every time I go, I'm doing bigger, better things as well. And like when I go dirt biking right now, my 5-year-old is on the back of my dirt bike and I'm going with him. So we're out of balance and it's a lot more tricky. Yeah, it's a bigger bike. And so there's a lot more skills involved. And so that's where it comes to facing that PTSD, and then eventually you're pushing it out, and that's part of rewiring too. So
Yeah.
anyways, that was a lot of different tangents around my brain injury, but there's lots more to it.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah.
definitely. Like, and you talk about Caroline Leaf. So my
Mhm.
first introduction was Dr. Joe Dispenza. We've talked about him before on this
Yeah.
podcast. But then right after, literally right after I read Dr. Joe Dispenza, I read Caroline Leaf. And
Mhm.
they are so like in vibe with one another.
Mhm.
They're saying the same thing. I mean, they're both talking about neuroscience. Like
Yeah.
literally that's what they're talking about and how to rewire your brain.
Yeah.
And so you talk about how you do these things now that scare you. And
Yeah.
I have talked to people that have rewired their brain to a point where it's like they go and do things that scare them, and they do it so much that they forget that they're afraid of it. Like that's
Exactly.
how much of a pattern they've created with rewiring their mind. So
Mhm.
they literally keep doing the thing that scares them until it's like, oh, I forgot that this scared me. Now it's just like, this is just what I do kind of thing. Like,
Exactly.
this
Yeah,
is
and that's how it is
okay.
for me too. It's just with certain things like snowboarding or dirt biking, you're constantly pushing yourself. You're going down like steeper
Yeah.
hills or whatever it
Yeah.
is. So that's where I still will have it coming up,
Sure.
but how it came up last year doesn't come up in that way anymore
Right.
because I'm moving forward. So every time I go, I'm getting a little bit better
Better.
and the
Hmm.
anxiety is coming from harder challenges. Whereas if I just did the same kind of route, the same path, that no longer would give me anxiety. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, like whenever I'm looking to rewire my brain, I literally like you have to first notice the thing that you
Mhm.
either want to change. What's the thought? What's the behavior? What's the whatever it is that you want to change? You have to notice it. You have to notice yourself doing it too. This
Yeah.
is probably one of the most difficult pieces that I see either myself or other people go through. Because, like, you don't always recognize the subconscious patterns.
Mhm.
Sometimes you need help to point those things out, right?
Yeah.
So, but noticing it first is crucial. This for me is the reason that I meditate because I notice a lot of things
Mhm.
about myself when I sit there and I'm meditating. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that will come up that I either didn't know were there or I did know they were there and I need to continue to
Yeah.
rewire my brain. So, first it's noticing. And then after you notice it, it's like, okay, I want to stop this. What do I want to replace there? Like, what is
Mhm.
the thing that I want to do instead? What's either the thought that I want to continue to think,
Yeah.
or what's the action that I want to continue to do? And like
Yeah.
you said with snowboarding, it was like, well, I'm going to keep doing it
Mhm.
and I'm not going to let the fear run me. So it's like you
Yeah.
kept doing it. And then what happens is you keep, like I said, you keep doing it so much that you forget that that
Mhm.
was your reality. Like one of the most, oh man, amazing testimonials that I heard was this lady had sarcoidosis. Now, sarcoidosis is like a really serious issue with your body. You've got issues with your lungs. You've got really the big issue is with your lungs, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of things, your spine, lots of stuff going on with sarcoidosis. And this lady, through the power of rewiring her mind, and she did it through meditation, that was her modality. And there's a lot of different modalities you can use, but her modality was meditation. She rewired her brain so much that it's like she forgot that she had sarcoidosis. So
Wow.
much so, she got rid of the sarcoidosis. Like it was completely gone from her body. She became a new person, basically. That's
Yeah,
literally what's happening when you're rewiring your brain. You
for
become
sure.
a new person.
Well, what your
And
cells regenerate, what is it? How many every 21 days you have
I
new cells?
believe so. That's something I'd have to look up because I haven't
Yeah.
seen that in a long time. So I know a lot of like medical body stuff, but I don't always remember it right here, right now. But yes,
For
they
sure.
do. Your
Yeah.
cells and your everything in your body cycles over.
Yeah. So
Um,
that's when you're like holding trauma or illness or any of that kind of stuff. Like you can literally create new cells to replace that
yeah,
and have
yeah.
literally a new body, a new life, a new
Yeah,
mind.
a new mind, everything. And so like with her, um, she literally didn't have sarcoidosis anymore. Like it's not in her body anymore. And what ended up happening is she was asked to speak on stage with what did she do to get rid of
Mhm.
the sarcoidosis. And she said she had to call her husband. This is how much she didn't connect with sarcoidosis anymore. She had to call her husband and be like, "Did I have sarcoidosis or am I making this up?" Like that's how much she had rewired her brain because she's like,
That's
I
awesome.
don't even connect with that person anymore. I don't even know who that is anymore.
Mhm.
And that's literally the rewiring that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And like in my life, how I did this, one of the things that I hated, which is funny that I'm doing what I'm doing now. Growing up, I hated public speaking. Like,
Yeah.
literally thought I was going to die. It was like the
Mhm.
worst thing ever. I think probably from sixth grade until oh God, when did I stop finally? It was after high school. I think I was in college when I finally was like, this is the stupidest thing for me to actually be afraid of. Like, what am I worried about? But
Mhm.
I was deathly afraid. Like you could tell I was nervous. You could hear my voice shake. You could see that I was standing up there sweating like people, and I
Mhm.
knew people were making fun of me. And so that made it worse. So it's like adding on top of it, like I'm
Mhm.
worried about what people are thinking. And then I'm hearing people making fun of me. And it's like making it worse, right? So I get to college and we have to do public speaking. And I choose a career path where public speaking is a part of it. Like we do a lot of medical presentations, right? Like in case anybody
Mhm.
doesn't know, I'm a nurse anesthetist by trade. I also do online marketing because for me, like I didn't want to do anesthesia or hospital stuff forever. But anyways,
Yep.
so I chose a path where it was like we do a lot of presentations, and I was like, I got to get out of this habit of fear
Mhm.
around being in front of other people. And I decided one day, I remember the day I made the decision. This is like so crucial, I feel like, if you want to rewire your brain. I remember the day I decided I was done with feeling that way. And
Mhm.
so I decided for my next, because I was in public speaking at this time in my college journey.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking for my next presentation that I do, I'm going to have fun. And so
Mhm.
I decided to choose a topic that was going to be fun to me and
Mhm.
that could actually allow me to demonstrate. I demonstrated how to play volleyball, right? Like
Okay,
that was
fun.
a super passion for me. And
Yeah.
so I was like, what better way to rewire or start really rewiring my mind than
Mhm.
talking about things that I'm actually passionate about instead of what the person that's teaching the class tells me to talk about. So I'm like, I'm going to teach volleyball. So
Mhm.
I get up there and I'm literally like showing people this is how you do it. And I'm just like excited. And that was the first time that I was like, this is fun. I
Yeah.
can actually share passions with people by opening my mouth. And it
Mhm.
was that decision of, I don't want to feel like this anymore,
Yeah.
that I was like, okay, what do I have to start doing?
Mhm.
What's the thought process that I have to let go of? I have to let go of the fear of getting in front of people. Okay, I can do that. And so it
Mhm.
was like replacing the thought and then doing the actions that would replace the fear. Like I feel the fear, but I'm still going to do this anyways.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's what made the
Mhm.
difference.
Yeah. And it's so cool because there's so many different modalities and there's so many synchronicities to it all.
Yeah.
But there's like so many little powerful tools that you can do on the fly. And like I do prefer journaling, you prefer
Yeah.
meditating, but then there's also just like I don't know what you want to call it, but like taking from like the energy from your feet up.
Yeah.
um as an empath, I'll pick up on other people's energy,
Same.
and I'm like, oh, is this mine or someone else's?
Yeah.
And
Same.
usually it's someone else's, and I'm like, sometimes I don't know. I'm like, I'm just
Yeah.
going to release it. So you just like feel it in your body, and you pull it all away from your feet, and then you breathe it out. um Another one that we were talking about yesterday, like just us personally, was it's called Dark Side of the Moon. And so
Mm-hmm.
the whole mythology of it is that you're taking the trauma and moving it outside of your
Yeah.
body, so
Yeah.
it's not no longer in you. Same
Yeah.
idea, like you're getting it out of your body, and once you can get it out of your body, you feel more in control,
Mm-hmm.
and it isn't a part of you, it's not who you are. And then as you manipulate it outside of your body for that specific method, you take control over it, and then you end up like locking it in a box and throwing it on the dark side of the moon. And by doing that, it's you're never going to stumble into it again. And
Mm-hmm.
by doing that repetitively, you are removing that from your life completely.
Yep.
um so yeah, there's, and like same with journaling, with the Caroline Leaf journaling, you're journaling, these are the things that are bothering me, and I'm going to rewire it, these are the things that I want it to be. So you're taking it outside of you, and you're changing it to what you want.
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah, absolutely. Like there are so many tools, and I know, like you said, my tool of choice is meditation, and there's actually a Dr. Joe meditation where it's called Changing Boxes, and it's really similar
mm,
to the dark side of the moon
yeah,
visualization that you just talked about. Um, you're basically like seeing the problem outside of you. It's in a box, right? Like it's
yeah,
in a box, and then you're visualizing your life without that problem, and
mm,
you're changing boxes. Like
yeah,
look at your life. What's it going to feel like without that? Like look at a new box, create a new
mhm,
reality. I'm getting massive chills talking about this
mhm,
because I know that so many people can get a lot of value out
mhm,
of just these tools that we've shared alone.
yeah,
Because let's be honest, there's so many people that are stuck with
yeah,
anxiety, depression,
mhm,
frustration, anger, whatever word or emotion you want to put in there. Like
yeah,
you can and you have the power to rewire and let it go.
yeah, for
And
sure.
that's something that brings back the power to us and makes
Yeah,
us realize, "Oh, I'm actually in charge. I'm in control."
yeah,
I
for
don't
sure.
have to be a victim
Hmm.
of this emotion that I'm feeling. I actually am in charge of it. And
Yeah,
it's
well, and that's what we were
important.
talking about on our last podcast, is the power of I am. Like
Mm,
I am the creator, I am source. And so we are a victim to nothing. Like if we're having things show up in our life, in some way we're attracting that to us.
yeah.
And so it's really huge to like rewire your brain and create your life and change those cycles of the same things that you keep on attracting. And even just like with my mind model training, one of the simplest things to ask is, what are three things that work? You
Hmm.
know, so often we're like thinking about the negative and thinking
Hmm.
about what's not working, and so then you're dwelling on that, and what
Yeah.
you give attention to, you get more of. And so by thinking, okay, what are three things that are working, what
Working.
might I
Yeah.
do differently, it gets you into a different rhythm. And that's a very simple way that you can ask yourself, what are three things that are working about this specifically, or in general? The more specific the better, I believe. And then what can I do differently? And just ask yourself that like 100 times a day, or 10,
Hmm.
like whatever you do is going to benefit you. And there are really easy ways to just start doing simple tweaks to your rewiring.
Hmm. Absolutely. And one thing that isn't always talked about, but is incredibly important, one of the ways that you can also rewire your brain is through your body with your breath. That's one of the ones that just blows my mind because
Mhm.
we think like, oh, our body is having an anxiety attack or whatever, and it's like you actually can rewire in the moment of that as well, just through
Mhm.
your breathing alone. So think about when you're having, we're going to use anxiety for an example because it's an easy visual for a lot of people. Think about when you're having an anxiety attack, you're probably breathing really short, choppy breaths, you're breathing up high, you're not taking deep, diaphragmatic breaths. You're
Mhm.
just, and you hear people, and people hyperventilate when they're having that anxiety attack and creates more problem. So
Yeah.
when you're in the midst of something like that, when you first notice, like you got to notice people, like that's the most important piece. I am having an anxiety attack. What can I do? And having a plan before you have the anxiety attack, really freaking important, because when you're in the midst of the anxiety attack, you can't really have that logical thought because your amygdala, your part of your brain that's the amygdala, is now taking over. It's like your monkey mind, and your
Yep.
monkey mind says, we got to run, we got to fight, or we got to hide. Like that's all we
Mhm.
can do. We're in survival right now. But
Yep.
if you have a plan before you get to that anxiety attack, you can actually notice, okay, I'm having this happen right now. I'm going to start focusing on my breath, and I'm going to work with my breath. One of the best ways to get your body and your brain, your heart, your brain, your body back into coherence is to inhale for 5 seconds and exhale for 5 seconds. What's happening is you're stimulating, when you're inhaling, you're stimulating the part of your nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system. This is your fight or flight, like we got to run, we got to fight, we got to hide. So that's the inhale. The exhale is stimulating the part of your nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is your calm down. So, what
Mhm.
you're doing when you inhale for 5 seconds and exhale for 5 seconds is you're balancing those two nervous systems out. And you're
Mhm.
telling your body, okay, I'm safe.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening. I've literally made this up in my mind or whatever. Like, I don't want to say you've made it up in your mind, but it is that unfortunately is part of the process. A lot
Yeah.
of our reality is created with our mind. So, when you are inhaling 5 seconds, exhaling 5 seconds, you really can get into the operating system of your brain, your heart, and your body. And you can tell them literally, it's safe to be, I'm safe, I'm
Yeah.
balanced,
Mhm.
it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's one of the probably most powerful tools. I use this every single day without fail. I will be
Mhm.
like, okay, how am I feeling right now? Oh, let's do some breathing. Like
Yeah.
maybe I'm like out at the store, or maybe even on this podcast. If you're having a really good long-winded thought, maybe I'll sit here and do a 5 second in, 5 second out, because I'm just recentering myself, and
Mhm.
how powerful that can be for anybody that tries that.
For
So
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like we said, there are so many tools you can use. And the piece of the puzzle that to me is the most important if you want to start rewiring is just getting into the habit of noticing yourself, noticing what's going on with you on a moment to moment basis. And this
Mhm.
isn't easy. Like I don't know how about you, Ashley, but this was like oh no, is that what I'm doing?
Yeah. I think self-awareness is one of the hardest things, and it's
Mm.
the whole onion analogy is you think you're doing good, and then you peel back another layer, and you're like, "Oh, geez."
That's there? I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, you think you're doing good, you think you're on the right track. You're like, I'm rewiring my brain for wealth or health or
Mhm.
whatever it is, love that you want in your life. You're like, I'm doing it, I'm doing great. And then, like you said, you peel back that onion a little bit more, and you're like, ooh, that was there. I
Mhm.
didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
new. So
Mhm.
it's interesting. I feel like that's literally the whole point of life. And I'm going to get existential here for a second. I literally feel like that's the point of life, is the
Yeah.
self-discovery of
Mhm.
what's going on inside.
Yeah.
That to me is like number one. So,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, for me, I'm always like, "Oh, I didn't know I did that. Oh, that's new. Okay." Like, and that is through practice. Like,
Mhm.
none of the stuff that we've talked about right now happened overnight. It was through practice. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that gets people stuck more often than not, is they're like, "Oh, it didn't happen right away."
Mhm.
It didn't happen in 5 minutes. And it's like, well, listen, friend, like you've been practicing getting angry on a dime for how many years?
Yeah.
35 years, 40, 50. How many years have
Hmm.
you been practicing that? You're really good at
Yeah.
getting angry.
Plus you have generational
Yeah.
anchoring you in too.
Hmm.
So it's not just you, it's the 30 years of your dad, it's the 30 years of his dad. So,
Yeah, I was actually reading about that in the book that I'm reading right now. This morning, I was reading about that, reading about the nature nurture concept and how much are we receiving from our genetics.
mm,
And it's interesting because we really don't know. Like that's the thing that this author was talking about. His name is Joseph Ladeau. I think it's called The Synaptic Self. Super fascinating, but if you're not into like
mhm,
sciencey stuff, it's probably going to make your eyes cross. So, but it's a very good book in explaining how your brain works and a lot of like the research that we have so far on what happens with the brain. And the truth is, we really don't know.
no.
And we also don't know what we don't know, is the thing, because there's so much to
Yes.
the brain.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so he is talking about um, like what we're handed when we're in utero. And
Mm,
so think about this, like, and I've heard this before that the main times that you're imprinted on with your like your generational line, the first time is during conception. So the egg and the sperm get together. That's number one. So what are the feelings and thoughts that mom and dad are having when that happens? So friends, don't have sex when you're pissed off because you're imprinting on your future children. Don't do
well,
it.
and there's also sexual manifestation.
Yeah.
So that's another big one too. Like if you
Yeah.
want to talk manifesting energy, like sexual um
Huge. Lots of
is
energy.
is like the highest vibrational frequency. So whatever you're thinking about while you're having sex, you're really manifesting that.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
really being cognizant. So
If
that's
you're
number.
orgasming, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not having an orgasm, it's not as important. It
But
is for
still,
conception,
yeah,
for
but still
manifesting.
for conception and for manifesting, like you said.
Yeah.
But so that's the first time that you can be imprinted on. The second is when you're in utero. Like,
Hmm.
what are the thoughts and feelings that mom has?
Yeah.
What are the thoughts and feelings that are coming at her from either her husband or her partner, spouse, whatever, doesn't matter. But what are like, that's number two for
Hmm.
imprinting on that future child. And then the third is, and this makes me really sad because of our current health system, is
Hmm.
the when you're actually born and take your first
Yeah.
breath. Like, what's the experience when,
Horrible.
yeah, exactly, when people are let into this world?
Yeah.
Like those are like the three main times when it's like this is when you can get imprinted on,
Yeah.
especially. And so it's just kind of like, wow, what are we thinking? What are we feeling when we're handing this stuff to the
Hmm.
next generation? And I don't think that people think about this enough.
Hmm.
Like, I think that this is a huge missing. And we're always thinking about, oh, what can we teach the next generation once they're here?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't think about what we're giving to the next generation as they're coming into this universe.
Yeah. For
It's
sure.
just a huge missing that kind of makes me sad because it's like, I really think that if we were focusing on this,
Hmm.
what kind of generation could be created as a result if we brought awareness, more awareness to it. What are the
Hmm.
thoughts you're thinking and feeling during these times, during these crucial times for an embryo, for a baby, for a child? Like how could you shape the future generations
Yeah.
just in those moments alone?
Yeah, it's insane. Like, and I think that's where we're going to go through that awakening, and people are going to really wake up to that. Like, we are having more people having home natural births and things like that. Like, that's becoming a more common accepted thing, not just like a oh, you're weird thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. But like even like with my kids, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, is like how just the way that I'm teaching them is so different than my parents. And like, I know they're going to have childhood trauma, which is something we've discussed too,
God, yeah.
especially with a co-parenting situation. But how I have been raising them, I wish I would have been raised that way. Like I see so many things that they're just thriving for, and yet I'm also seeing little pieces of their trauma show up too. Like my son came on switch day on Tuesday and he's like, "Oh, you have to look at the last 7 days of my day planner." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, my other home doesn't look at it unless I
Mm.
say it's something important." And I was just like, "Okay." And I'm like, "This isn't about his day planner. This is a bid for, I have not been seen
Yeah.
for the last 7 days, and
Mm.
I need you to see me right now."
Yeah. Yeah.
And he probably needs that the most out of the three kids, is that like middle child needing
Yeah.
to be seen.
Yeah.
So, um, but it's just like it's all those little things. And so as adults with children, we can help them rewire their brain and things like that. And one of the best things for kids is showing like, I see you in the
Yeah.
like the little things, and not in the accomplishments, but in the hard work and
Yeah.
what they're striving to do. So those are some really cool ways that you can like help a child rewire their brain. And also how you talk, so they learn how you talk, how you act, so you're modeling that for them. And I think it'll be pretty cool to see like what that brings. um I don't know if I've shared this story, but even just like the magic that my kids believe in, like it's pretty, I won't share it now. It's too long of a story, but
To be continued.
yes, I'll share it. I'll share it. It's more of a whole topic on its own. But I just think it's so cool to see what they're going to be like as adults. There's going to be
Mhm.
trauma. They're going to need to rewire their brain.
Yeah.
But when you're already having someone help you work on that as a kid, I think it's going to be a very different journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is huge. And I love that you do that for them. There's so much that you do that I'm like, I love that you do that
Mm.
because, like you said, I wish I had known this stuff growing up because I would have had a totally different life. I look at
Oh, for
people
sure.
that go to some of the meditation retreats that I've been to. Have seen 8-year-old kids
Mm.
meditating, having wild experiences. They literally have a Kundalini awakening and they are convulsing. Like
That's so
an
cool.
8-year-old child is able
Mhm.
to manipulate that kind of energy in an
Mhm.
effective way. That is crazy. So
Yeah.
I wish I'd had it, but I also go, okay, that's not my story. My story is to now help people
Mhm.
understand that this is a possibility in their life and that they can be open to it themselves, regardless of if they're 100 or if they're 3 years old. Like, that's my job now because now I'm aware. I
Yeah.
wasn't aware back then. I mean,
Mhm.
you and I talked about this on our last podcast, like that Christian upbringing and just the differences with it. One of the biggest differences was not understanding my own divinity because I thought that divinity was outside of me, that I
Yeah.
had this outside separate source that was divine, and I didn't realize that I had the divinity inside of me, which I
Yeah.
feel like is such a huge missing because you talk to Christians and they're like, "Oh no, I accepted Jesus into my heart." And it's like, "Yeah, but what
Mm.
does that mean? Like
Yeah.
he's in your heart, but he's not you?" Like I don't understand where the disconnect is. I
Yes, I
don't
agree.
understand how come you don't think now like you have that divinity, like you've chosen to have that divinity. Like
Mhm.
it's huge disconnect. And I mean, I used to believe that way too, so I
I
get
know.
it, but I also
Mhm.
don't get it now that I'm looking back. So
Yeah, I completely agree.
yeah, so but I think that continuing to bring like awareness, especially for the younger generation, around possibilities of magic all around you. Like, even as a kid, like, it's so much easier for us to jump into possibility and dreaming. And
Yeah.
as we get older, and it's because our brainwaves change as we get older, but as we get older, we lose that magic. Like,
Yes.
I love that you're teaching them, like, because in the past, when I was a kid, it was like, oh, magic's not real. Santa Claus isn't real, like that kind of thing, you know? And I'm not saying
Yeah.
Santa Claus is real, but like the whole magic of Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's not real. But you're actually going, oh, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
You are the magic. And you're
Yeah.
teaching them how to manipulate the energy that's already inside of them.
Yeah.
That is so huge
I think
that,
so.
yeah, I mean, who knows what the possibilities of that could create?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it already has. There's stories that you've shared with me that it's like, one of your kids is uh, like very intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're nurturing that.
Yeah.
I think as a child, and I still am very intuitive, but as a child, I was very intuitive, but I was told, oh, those are growing pains.
Yeah.
No, no, no. My body's trying to tell me something. And
Yeah.
I wasn't connected to it because this is, oh no, we're trying to explain it away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
When my daughter pulls tarot or spirit guide stuff, it's like, holy cow.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
kids are so intuitive, and
Yeah.
nurturing that is like huge for
Mhm.
the next, what does our world look like if we continue to nurture that understanding of who we are? Because that's what it comes down to, understanding who we are at a fundamental level and
Yeah.
helping
And
them
that's where,
understand.
yeah, we have to start with ourselves and rewiring ourselves so that we even can have any kind of foundation to work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved this conversation. I feel like we
Mhm.
could go on forever and ever, but I want to value everyone's time, and I'm also curious, like, if you loved this, like, if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe. If you're listening to us, give us 5 stars. Like, if you love this, like, we want to keep creating more content for you, and let us know, what are some topics that you want to hear? What are some things that you want to talk about with or have us talk about with you, and share our experiences and what we understand around this. So, with that, like I said, I think we're going to call TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap. So, until next time, we will see everyone later.
Have a great day.